You're watching Capital City Sunday.
Joining me on the show today is Dane County Judge Susan Crawford and candidate for Wisconsin Supreme Court race. Judge Crawford, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's my pleasure to be here.
Judge, this race is expected to break records set by the state's 2023 state Supreme Court race that garnered more than $50 million spent, resulting in the election of Justice Janet Protese, which you've reported your campaign has already raised nearly $3 million. What does that say about the stakes of this race?
I think the stakes of this race are really high, and I am really grateful for the support that I've received from people all across the state of Wisconsin who really care about our Supreme Court and who care about justice and want to make sure we have a court that remains fair and impartial and isn't held hostage to right-wing partisan interests.
And this race is, as you just stated, considered to be non-partial, non-partisan,
Right.
But you've received endorsements from the 4 liberal justices on the court and the state Democratic Party, just as your challenger has received endorsements from all 7 of Wisconsin's Republican members of Congress. How are these endorsements impacting your campaign?
Well, I'm really proud that I have the support of so many current justices on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. They are nonpartisan, impartial justices. I think they do a great job in delivering justice for the state of Wisconsin. And I've received endorsements from well over 150 other judges from across the state of Wisconsin, from both conservative-leaning counties and more liberal-leaning counties. And I think that shows that I am the right candidate to back as a nonpartisan, impartial justice. As you said, my opponent, because of his history as a partisan politician, is mainly looking to support from other partisan politicians. And I do think that says a lot about the race.
You are receiving some pushback this week from Republicans for attending a briefing with Democratic donors. The Republican Party has accused you of, quote, selling 2 of Wisconsin's congressional seats. How are you responding?
Well, that is a really ridiculous allegation. I did appear in front of a group it was a Zoom presentation, a Zoom meeting, and I briefly got in the Zoom, introduced myself, told the folks why I'm running for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, and then I left. And what I told them is what I tell everyone. I am really committed to being a fair, impartial justice on the Supreme Court. I'm not prejudging any potential future case, whether it involves something like our congressional maps or any other issue. So that is, what my message is and what I tell everybody, both that group and anybody else that wants to hear me speak about the race.
And to your point, what do you have to say to Republicans who argue you are committed to redrawing congressional districts to benefit Democrats?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've never taken a position, either publicly or privately for that matter, on the congressional maps. It's not something that I have made any kind of study of. There is no legal case, as far as I'm aware right now, raising any kind of a challenge to those maps. If one is ultimately brought, I'll do what I do in every case, which is to look at the evidence, make sure I know what the facts are, make sure that I understand what the legal arguments are of both sides bringing that case. And on the Wisconsin Supreme Court, I will deliberate and discuss that case with my colleagues on the Wisconsin Supreme Court before I make any decision. That is, I keep an open mind until the case is fully presented, and only then would I make a decision about a case like that.
Judge, high-profile issues like Act 10 addressing the state's collective bargaining laws and abortion rights will also likely come before the court. What will be your approach to those issues if appointed to the court?
Well, really the same as what I just described. I will approach each case with an open mind. I'll make sure that I use the same common sense approach in every case, make sure I get the facts right, make sure that I understand what the law is that should be applied in that case. I look at the impact of the decision on the people involved, and in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, I will also be looking at how that decision may affect future cases, because Wisconsin Supreme Court decisions establish precedent that all of the state courts in Wisconsin have to apply. So that's the approach I would take, and I just want to contrast that with what we're seeing from my opponent, Brad Schimmel, who even today, as a candidate for the Wisconsin Supreme Court, is announcing how he would decide those cases. That is not the way judges should act. It is prejudicial to the parties in those cases, and it's something you'll never hear me doing.
Republicans have alluded to having a weak candidate in the 2023 Supreme Court race and are focusing their efforts on the April election. Republicans have retained majorities in the state legislature, the state's congressional seats, and President Donald Trump won the state. Is this a concern for your campaign at all?
It's really not. You know, I'm really focused on helping voters to understand what this campaign, what this election is all about. It really comes down to whether they want a fair and impartial justice on the Supreme Court who has a history of working to protect their rights under our laws, or whether they want a partisan politician with extreme views who wants to use the Supreme Court to push an extreme political agenda. And I think voters will understand that and will choose a common sense, impartial justice.
Dane County Judge Susan Crawford, candidate for Wisconsin's Supreme Court race. Judge Crawford, thank you so much again for your time.
It was my pleasure. Thank you, Darrielle.